Have you ever found yourself repeating a behavior you hate without knowing why? Have you felt like you're reacting to life, not really living it? What if I told you that behind those automatic choices, there's an invisible system that's been programmed into you since childhood, and without realizing it, you've been trained to obey? The good news is, it's not your fault. The bad news, it still controls you today. Pavlov became famous for making dogs salivate at the sound of a bell. But here's the scary truth. The whole of society has learned how to ring bells to control you, and they work. In this video, we'll peel back the layers of this invisible conditioning, the kind that shapes your desires, your habits, even your sense of self. It's no longer about what you want from life, it's about realizing who you were programmed to be. Maybe for the first time, you'll look at your mind with new eyes and begin to break free. What really controls you, and you never noticed? Do you believe you're in control of your decisions? Most people would quickly say yes. After all, we wake up, choose what to wear, what to eat, where to go. But pause for a moment and observe. How many of those choices did you actually think about? Most of what we live each day is repetition, routines, reactions, beliefs, automatisms disguised as free will. And that's where the deepest illusion lies. We confuse habit with identity. If you wake up anxious every morning, you start believing you're an anxious person. If you always sabotage opportunities, you tell yourself, I'm just not cut out for this. But what if I told you those patterns are not who you are? They're just conditioned responses you learned without realizing it. Psychology calls this conditioning, but in real life it's more than a technical term. It's the invisible architecture that's been shaping your life since your earliest years. As a child, you learned that pleasing others brings rewards, that making mistakes brings punishment, that crying can push people away, that being yourself might not be enough. These lessons weren't taught with words. They came through feelings, glances, silences, and your brain, to survive, learned to respond. Years later, you're still responding the same way. Only now, without noticing. You avoid conflict, seek approval, lose yourself in relationships, and think that's just your personality. But it's merely a reflection of what you had to become to be accepted. You were trained for this, not out of cruelty, but through repetition, through fear, through misunderstood love. And like a dog hearing the bell, you react to life, unaware of why. Freedom begins when you stop asking, why am I like this? And start asking, who taught me to be this way? Because only when you recognize what controls you can you begin to take control back. Pavlov wasn't just right. He was predicting the 21st century. In the early 1900s, Ivan Pavlov rang a bell and changed psychology forever. He wasn't trying to make history, just studying dog salivation, but what he uncovered was far more disturbing. The brain learns to react, not think. Conditioning. A neutral sound, repeated just before food, eventually triggered the same physical response as the food itself. The dog didn't choose, it reacted. This experiment became the foundation of behavioral psychology. But what few people realize is, Pavlov didn't just reveal something about dogs, he exposed the machinery inside us all. And today, in the 21st century, that machinery is being used, not in labs, but in your phone, your habits, your fears, your desires. Every beep, notification, like, heart, buzz, is a bell. And you? You've been trained to salivate for attention, approval, distraction. Pavlov's discovery was simple, but devastating. If you associate a stimulus with a reward, you can control behavior. Now think about what that means in modern life. Every time you feel bored, you scroll. Every time you feel lonely, you post. Every time you feel insecure, you compare. Every time you feel anxious, you shop, you eat, you numb, and you don't remember choosing any of it. That's because modern systems, from social media to advertising to consumerism, don't need to convince you anymore. They just trigger your conditioning. You're not buying products. You're buying relief from an emotional itch they taught you to have. And when they can predict your reaction, they no longer need to ask for your attention. They own it. But here's the cruel irony. We think we're evolving, becoming smarter, more connected. Yet we're becoming more programmable than ever. Pavlov was trying to understand biology. But the tech companies, marketers, and media giants of today, they're using the same principles, not to study you but to shape you, to keep you engaged, addicted, clicking, obeying. And it works because the brain still doesn't ask why. It only asks, what comes next? And if next is dopamine, even just a little, you'll come back. We laugh at dogs salivating at bells, but we chase likes, crave texts, and feel empty without a buzz in our pocket. We are the experiment now. The 21st century didn't improve Pavlov's theory. It industrialized it. So if you want to reclaim your freedom, the first step is to see the bell. You are not your desires, how they were planted in you. What if your desires aren't really yours? That voice inside that says, I need this, I want that, I'll be happy when... What if it's been shaped, not by your soul, but by someone else's design? We live in a culture that glorifies desire. Want more, be more, achieve more. Desire is sold as freedom, but most of the time it's just conditioning wearing a prettier mask. From the moment you are old enough to watch TV or hear an ad, someone's been whispering in your mind, you're not complete yet. And then conveniently, but this product, this lifestyle, this version of yourself, that will complete you. This is not desire, this is implantation. Pavlov showed us the formula: stimulus, reward. Now imagine this applied to an entire society. Stimulus, an ad showing perfect bodies, cars, homes, couples. Reward, a brief hit of hope. Maybe that could be me. But underneath that hope is a more powerful message. You're not enough as you are, and the brain, ever seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, learns to chase, to consume, to desire endlessly, not because of who you are, but because of what you've been trained to crave. And here's the quiet tragedy. You confuse craving with purpose. You believe wanting something means it matters. You confuse the hunger with your identity. You were never taught how to sit with emptiness, only how to fill it, not how to face your longing, but how to silence it with distractions. Every scroll through your feed is a training session. Every algorithm is a teacher, showing you what to want. And each time you respond, by clicking, buying, envying, the conditioning deepens. Desire becomes reflex, impulse becomes routine, and routine becomes identity. But pause. Think of a moment when you felt truly alive, even without anything to prove, to buy, to chase. That stillness, that quiet knowing that you are already whole, that was yours. Desire doesn't need to vanish, but it needs to be reclaimed. Desire, in its purest form, is sacred. It points us toward meaning, depth, connection. But when hijacked, it becomes addiction, a loop without end. So here's the truth. You are not your cravings. You are not your hungers. You are not your performance, your appearance, or your success. You are the awareness behind all of that. And until you remember that, the world will keep training you to forget. The Pavlovian dog lives inside you, triggers that shape your daily life. You don't need a leash around your neck to be trained. You just need a few well-placed emotional triggers, and most of them were installed long ago. By now, Pavlov's bell doesn't have to ring outside you. It rings inside you, and when it does, you move. You snap at your partner over something small. You feel waves of shame when someone disagrees with you. You shut down when you feel misunderstood. You procrastinate every time something really matters. These aren't decisions. They're responses, automatic, predictable, conditioned. And yet, they feel personal. Because the conditioning happened so early, so often, that your brain stopped questioning it. Now it just obeys. Let's call them what they are: internalized triggers. Her certain tone of voice reminds you of childhood criticism, and suddenly you're defensive. A pause in a message makes you anxious, as if silence always means rejection. A compliment makes you uncomfortable, because deep down, you still believe you're not enough. Every one of us carries these invisible levers, and the world unknowingly or deliberately pulls them. We think we're reacting to the moment, but we're often reacting to an old wound, still echoing. And here's the hard part. The more you repeat the response, the deeper the path becomes in your brain. It becomes the default, the habit, the pattern you start calling just the way I am. But it's not you. It's the training. Think of it like walking the same trail in the forest every day. Eventually, the trail becomes easier to follow, even if it leads you somewhere painful. So when something triggers your anxiety, anger, withdrawal, or self-sabotage, it's not random. It's a signal. A bell has rung, and the dog inside you starts to salivate. But here's the power: you don't have to follow the bell forever. The moment you recognize a trigger, not just feel it, but see it, is the moment the training begins to weaken. You can pause. You can ask, wait, is this me, or is this my conditioning? And just that small act of awareness, that sacred interruption, can begin to rewire everything. The dog inside you isn't bad. It was just scared. It just wanted safety, love, connection. But you're not that dog anymore. You don't have to obey the same bells. You can train your awareness instead of your reactivity. You can become the one who sees, not just the one who salivates. And that is where true freedom begins. Childhood and repetition. How we learn to obey without question. You weren't born obedient. You came into this world raw, wild, curious, full of instinct, emotion, and need. But it didn't take long before you began to adapt. Not because someone told you to, but because your nervous system learned what was safe and what wasn't. Long before you had words, you had impressions. You felt the energy in a room. You sensed tension, disappointment, approval. And slowly, without even knowing it, your brain began to make a map. Be quiet here. Smile there. Don't cry too much. Don't take up too much space. Don't be too you. This is how obedience begins, not with rules, but with repetition. And repetition doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes it's in the raised eyebrow of a parent when you express anger. Sometimes it's in the silence after you ask for help. Sometimes it's in the way love was only given when you performed well, stayed small, or didn't inconvenience anyone. You weren't told to obey. You were trained to associate certain behaviors with pain and others with love. And like Pavlov's dogs, you started salivating for approval. You adjusted yourself to survive, because back then, love was survival. But survival has a cost. The child who learned to be good often becomes the adult who forgets who they are. They don't know what they want, only what's expected. They don't feel worthy unless they're useful, productive, pleasing. So they live on autopilot, avoiding conflict, swallowing feelings, numbing needs, repeating patterns. And the worst part? It feels normal, because what was repeated in childhood becomes invisible in adulthood. It becomes just the way I am. But it's not who you are. It's who you became to survive a world that didn't always know how to love you properly. Here's the truth. Most of what you call personality is just a collection of survival strategies. The perfectionism, the people-pleasing, the fear of failure, the constant anxiety. These aren't flaws. They're echoes. They're your nervous system's memory of a time when being too much or not enough had real consequences. And now, you're still ringing those same bells, still walking those same paths, still obeying rules that no longer apply. But here's the beautiful and painful part. You can't heal what you don't see. And once you see the training, you can begin to unlearn it. You can ask, what part of me is still trying to be a good child? Where am I still afraid to take up space? Whose approval am I still chasing, even now? And most importantly, what would it mean to be free, not perfect? Freedom doesn't mean rejecting your past. It means making peace with the child who learned to obey, and gently teaching them. You don't have to anymore. You can be free, but it will hurt first. Freedom sounds beautiful. But let's be honest, at first, it's terrifying. Because when you begin to unlearn the conditioning, when you stop automatically obeying the invisible rules, when you dare to ask, what if I choose differently? What you feel isn't liberation. It's fear, it's grief, it's disorientation, and that's not a sign you're doing it wrong, it's a sign you're waking up. See, the cage you've lived in was never made of iron bars, it was made of patterns, predictability, approval, the comfort of being who others needed you to be. And when you step outside that cage, there's no applause, there's silence. People get uncomfortable. Relationships shake. Your old life stops fitting. Because here's the part no one tells you. Freedom costs. It costs certainty. It costs the identity you spent a lifetime performing. It costs the illusion that if you just try harder, you'll finally be enough. You'll feel the pull to go back, to numb again, to please again, to obey again. Because the pain of waking up is real. You start to see what you gave up to be loved. You start to feel the emptiness behind your achievements. You start to notice how much of your life was built to avoid rejection, not to express truth. And truth doesn't beg to be liked. But here's where everything begins to shift. You learn to sit in the discomfort without escaping it. You learn to let the silence teach you. You grieve the self you never got to be. You breathe through the fear of being misunderstood. You allow the collapse of what was never really you in the first place, and in that space, raw, uncertain, sacred, something starts to emerge, something older than your fear, wiser than your habits, truer than any role you've played, your real voice, your real self, the one who never stopped whispering even when you weren't listening. Freedom isn't about becoming someone new. It's about finally being who you are, beneath the training, the masks, the obedience. But first, you have to mourn. Mourn the years lost to fear. Mourn the love that came with conditions. Mourn the parts of yourself you had to hide to be accepted. It will hurt. And then, it will open. Because the pain of waking up is temporary. But the pain of living asleep? That lasts a lifetime. So yes, you can be free. But you have to walk through the fire first. Not to be burned, but to be reborn. How to reprogram the brain. Awareness, choices, and small revolutions change doesn't begin with a massive leap. It begins with a pause, a single breath before the automatic reaction, a single moment where you ask, is this really me, or just my training speaking? That pause is your first act of freedom, and that's how reprogramming begins, not by force, but by awareness. Let's be clear, your brain is not your enemy. It's a beautifully efficient survival machine. It learns through repetition, through reward, through association. The same way it was conditioned, it can be reconditioned. But here's the secret. You don't reprogram the brain by doing more. You do it by choosing differently, again and again. 1. Awareness. Before action. You can't change what you can't see. Start by noticing your triggers. What makes you shut down, lash out, numb out? When you feel the urge to scroll, argue, apologize for existing, don't resist it. Observe it. Name it. Oh, that's the part of me that learned to keep the peace at all costs. Oh, that's the child in me afraid of not being loved. The moment you bring awareness to a pattern, you interrupt the spell. 2. Micro choices, massive shifts. You don't need to overhaul your life. You just need to make one different choice, consistently. Say no when you'd normally say yes. Speak honestly instead of pleasing. Pause before reacting. Let yourself rest without guilt. Feel a hard feeling without escaping it. Each of these is a small revolution, a vote for the self you're becoming. Your brain takes note. Neural pathways begin to shift. The bell rings. And this time, you don't salivate. 3. Ritual over willpower. Willpower fades, but rituals, they rewire. Create small daily practices that bring you back to yourself. Journaling, silence, movement, honest conversations, nature. Not to fix yourself, but to return to yourself. Because reprogramming is not just mental. It's emotional, somatic, spiritual. You're not just changing thoughts. You're healing the memories underneath them. 4. Compassion as fuel. You will slip. You will react. You will repeat old patterns. Don't turn that into another reason to punish yourself. Because the real transformation happens when even in the moment you fail, you choose kindness instead of shame. That's the reprogramming most of us were never taught. You can be imperfect and still be safe, still be loved, still be worthy. 5. community, and mirrors. Healing alone is possible, but healing with others is exponential. Surround yourself with people who are also unlearning, who don't expect you to perform or pretend, who mirror back your truth, not your conditioning. Your nervous system learns what's safe through repetition. Let it repeat belonging without obedience. Let it repeat love without masks. You won't wake up one day and feel totally reprogrammed, but you will look back and realize you respond differently. You no longer betray yourself to keep the peace. You no longer chase what hurts you. And all because one day you chose a different path and kept choosing it. Freedom isn't one big choice. It's thousands of small, quiet, sacred ones. You are not a dog, rediscovering your human freedom. You were never meant to live on command, and yet, for so long that's what life became, a series of conditioned responses, a quiet obedience to bells you didn't know were ringing, a life shaped by approval, avoidance, repetition. But now, you see it, and that changes everything. Because here's the truth, you are not a dog. You were not born to react, you were born to choose, to wonder, to imagine, to create meaning beyond instinct and survival. A dog hears a bell and salivates, but a human hears a bell and can pause, reflect, and say, no. That pause is sacred. It's where freedom lives, not in doing whatever you want, but in finally knowing why you want what you want, and having the power to change it. Yes, you were trained. Yes, you were conditioned. Yes, there are still echoes of that inside you, but those echoes don't define you. They don't get to decide your future, because unlike the dog in the lab, you can look at the bell and choose to walk away. You can respond, not react. You can forgive, not repeat. You can speak even when your voice shakes. You can live aligned with your truth, not your training. And that truth, it was never lost. It was just buried beneath years of trying to be good, safe, loved. Now is the time to stop obeying, to stop betraying your body for comfort, to stop outsourcing your worth, to stop waiting for permission, and instead, to begin, to rediscover, to remember that freedom is not something you earn, it's something you reclaim by being deeply, unapologetically human, messy, emotional, awake, able to choose, not just respond. So the next time the world rings a bell, to provoke your fear, to hijack your desire, to pull you back into who you used to be, pause. And in that breath, that space, that sacred refusal, you remind yourself, I am not a dog, I don't need to obey. I am free to become,